Ladies and gentlemen, sports fans alike, welcome to another edition of Bill Swirsky Sports Talk Chicago, one of the couple, two, three best podcasts around. So sit back, grab yourself a cold one and a Polish sausage, park your keister in the French room, and listen to Bill Swirsky Sports Talk Chicago.
In Chicago, you know that all sports rock. The Bears, Hawks, Bulls, Cubs, and Sox. Pick your favorite, you can choose, as long as the Packers lose. For everything you need to know, it's Bill Swirsky Sports Talk Chicago. Bill Swirsky Sports Talk Chicago.
Hey everybody, welcome to another edition of Bill Swirsky Sports Talk Chicago. This is your host, Alex and Sean. On this episode, we're going to be talking about the Bulls and the Blackhawks draft, which happened this week. And we're going to be talking about this week's baseball talk with Cubs and White Sox. But first, I'd like to thank our sponsor, the Rockford Ice Hogs. If you're not familiar with the Rockford Ice Hogs, they're the AHL minor league affiliate of the Chicago Blackhawks. What does that mean for you? You get to see the stars of tomorrow today at family-friendly, affordable prices. Season is over now, but that shouldn't stop you from heading on over to icehogs.com, picking up a hat, shirt, jersey, signing up for season tickets, and more. Tell them Swirsky Sports sent you. Alex, this was a pretty big week. We had the start of a Cubs 10-game homestand. We had the NBA draft on Thursday, and then followed up by the NHL draft. So, you know, it was pretty action-packed, a lot of things to talk about.
Yeah, and don't forget we had Cubs and White Sox at Wrigley Field earlier this weekend. While I'm not really one to be like, oh, it's a huge deal, I think that it's at least relevant because the Sox are on the rise and the Cubs are trying to battle for a division title. So I think there is a little bit of relevancy there, at least within the city.
Yeah, I mean, absolutely. And it's funny, the way it played out was, I think it added some fuel to the rivalry, not the hatred, but the rivalry. I guess we'll just jump right into talking about this. So yeah, it was a 2-game set, which is probably for the best.
Yeah.
Is, we ended up with a 1-1 split. And it's funny because, you hinted this would happen is we were facing Ivan Nova in the first game and Lucas Giolito in the second game. Ivan Nova is one of the most god-awful pitchers in Major League Baseball, and Lucas Giolito is arguably the best.
Mm-hmm.
And Ivan Nova in game 1 just shut down the Cubs offense.
Had them off balance, had them guessing. And, one of the reasons I was worried about that is because I remember Ivan Nova is a Pirate. He was a Pirate for several years. So the Cubs are not unfamiliar with Ivan Nova, but it seemed like most of the times when Ivan Nova pitched against the Cubs, he was always frustrating.
Yeah, and he absolutely did that in this game. And the Cubs just really couldn't get anything going.
No, they couldn't. I mean, the one run came on the first pitch of the ball game to Kyle Schwarber, and he hit the home run, and that was it. Yeah, and that was it for the scoring for the Cubs. I mean, they really didn't even make a lot of noise. Chris Bryant and Jason Hayward had multiple hits, but other than that, Schwarber's home run was the only other hit. Yeah, I think the way the game ended, it was one of the biggest moments for the White Sox in years. And I know that sounds silly, but when you think about it, when the Cubs and Sox are playing, it gets more attention around the nation because people like inter-city rivalries, if you want to call it a rivalry. I mean, to the fans, it's a rivalry. To the teams, it's not. But, I mean, when it ended with Eloy Jimenez, the former Cubs prospect, the star Cubs prospect that was traded to the White Sox at Wrigley Field, in his first Major League game at Wrigley Field, him hitting a go-ahead and game-winning home run was, to a Sox fan, probably one of the best feelings they've had in several years. I mean, would you agree with that? Yeah, it's got to be a huge moment for a White Sox fan, and to a Cubs fan, it's got to be fairly devastating.
How did you
It's,
feel?
I mean,
Honestly, how did you feel?
I'm going to preface this. This is in no way, shape, or form my opinion on Eloy Jimenez or how, my hopes of how he'll play in the future. But man, it really felt like after how we've seen Jose Quintana pitch recently and how Eloy is starting to really come into his own, it just felt like a knife in the back just being twisted.
Yeah, I feel you there. I remember when Eloy came up in that situation, I knew in the back of my mind, he's going to hit one. And that home run was no cheapie. That was a rocket. And, I know the Cubs and Sox travel well to each other's stadiums during these games, but wow. All the Sox fans that were at Wrigley Field, that was pretty loud, wouldn't you say?
Yeah, it was absolutely loud. And at one point I was listening to it mostly on the radio, and I was like, I thought this was at Wrigley Field. Like that's how loud it was. That I had to like really think about it. I was like, well, the Cubs batted last, and I thought they were in Wrigley Field. So I'm like, why is it so loud? This is weird. And you're right. The White Sox fans, I don't know the splits of Cubs fans to White Sox fans, but it was really, really loud, boisterous White Sox fans.
My guess, just based on what I saw on TV, maybe Wrigley was about a third White Sox fans. But when something big happens, you're going to make a lot for your team. You're going to make a lot of noise. So if the crowd was, I don't know, 10,000 White Sox fans, roughly of 40,000, or, just a guesstimate, 10, 15, something big like that happens, they're going to make as much noise as they can. And that really made a difference. The way I felt right after that game, I was in the moment, it killed me because of who it was, because he was once ours. We traded him in a way. And while Quintana's had some good moments as a Cub, we haven't seen it consistently. And look, his last few starts have not been good at all. I was feeling that pain a bit. But as time went on, I wasn't salty about White Sox fans celebrating because, heck, if this was the Cubs in the other way around, we'd be celebrating like crazy too. So I couldn't be mad at them for celebrating something like this. They should celebrate something like this. I was just kind of upset with how they lost. They got shut down by a bum pitcher. They just looked lifeless. Cole Hamels pitched another gem, and they didn't do anything for him. If this was a game against the Tampa Bay Rays and some unknown guy hits a home run, you would feel the same anger as losing that game. But in the moment, it felt like that knife twist you were talking about because of who it was and where he once was.
And I know this feeling of where one side thinks they got a really good deal and end up in the end not really, because the Cubs got Sammy Sosa and Sammy Sosa ended up having a very, very, very good career with the Cubs, and the White Sox had him at one point, and that could have been theirs. So I get that, because I've definitely heard White Sox fans getting it rubbed in their faces about Sammy Sosa.
Sure.
So I mean, it's just now it's the turn to get Eloy Jimenez rubbed in our face for the next 10 years.
Yeah, and I'm ready for it. I've kind of come to peace with it. I understand that they are getting the better end of the deal here. Now, like I said, if Quintana wins a World Series with the Cubs, I won't care even more. But I've come to terms with it. I'm not going to be surprised anymore when he does something great. It's like, well, we could have had him. I get that. I do. So I'm moving on kind of from that in terms of that aspect. But this is something that kind of came up in my mind, and I know a few Cubs fans were talking about. Do you remember the game in 2006 when AJ Pierzynski hit the go-ahead home run off Ryan Dempster with 2 outs?
Vaguely.
Because that
Vaguely.
was from a Cub. People were comparing it to that, and in the moment I was comparing it to that, and then I thought again. I'm like, no, it was nowhere near that bad. But I'm sure a lot of Cubs and Sox fans remember that game well. To refresh your memory, they were up like, I think it was either like 6-4 or 8-6, something like that. But they were up by 2 runs with 2 outs, nobody on, and then 2 guys reached, and Pierzynski hit the go-ahead home run. It was a few weeks after the whole brawl on the South Side. The Cubs were in the cellar and terrible. The Sox were the defending champs. For a Sox fan, that was probably the all-time great moment in the crosstown for them. For the Cubs fan, it was probably an all-time low. But for that moment, for a Sox fan with Eloy Jimenez, that's got to be right up there. That may even surpass that AJ moment.
Yeah, my buddy Gary has definitely been rubbing the Eloy Jimenez trade in my face, and I get it. He's very happy about it, but I'm not sure like what the point he's trying to make is, because it happened. There's not much you can do about it. It happened. It's done. It's there. We made our choice.
Yeah, the trade was 2 years ago. Yeah, there's really nothing you can do about it now. And look, it's not like they're a division rival, so it's not like he's tormenting you 20 games a year.
Right. He's not. You made the trade. At the time, you knew you were giving up a whole lot for Jose Quintana, but you're like, okay, look at the body of work he's had with the White Sox. You've got him under a very team-friendly control or salary and team control for several years. With a left-handed starting pitcher of that caliber, with that kind of contract, you have to pony up. You have to.
Yeah. It wasn't like a 1-year rental.
Yeah. And, and the funny thing is we gave up a lot when we gave up Gleyber Torres. But you know what? We got the World Series. So that is just,
I don't regret that one bit.
I don't even regret that. And if we are to get another World Series with Jose Quintana, it will make me probably go, well, we gave up Eloy, but we got another World Series. And I'll make that mental gymnastics work in my head. But in the meantime, what am I supposed to do? I'm a fan.
Yeah.
I just have to, the front office does what they do, and you got to trust them. And even if you don't trust them, what can you do? You're a fan. You say your piece.
Yeah, I think a lot of the Quintana angst by Cubs fans was blown up yesterday when he got his brains beaten by the Mets. And to be fair, Quintana, after a very good start this year, has kind of slipped a bit, and you hope he could get it back. But I just am so confused. What happened to that consistently good guy that was on the White Sox? A guy who pitched in a harder environment to pitch in the American League. What happened to him? We've seen flashes, but we haven't seen a full season of it.
I couldn't even begin to tell you.
We thought when he was coming here, he'd get better, because you're thinking, oh, he's got a better defense around him. He's going to be playing in the National League. Wrigley can be very hitter friendly, but not always. When it gets to October, it's colder again, so it's not necessarily as hitter friendly. The year before Quintana was traded to the Cubs, he was an all-star.
Yep.
I don't get what just suddenly happened to him. I know he made a few differences in the pitches he throws, but he's trying to get that back again. And, maybe getting rid of that cutter there was something there, because when he was throwing the cutter in 2016, you saw how good he was. It's still just, I don't know. I can't always tell you.
Well, next year the last year of the contract?
I think he's got a club option.
Yeah. So after that, you'll see what he's got, because then he'll be pitching for a contract.
Yeah. I just like to see him turn around now.
I mean, you and me both. You and me both. It would take the sting away a lot.
That April Quintana, April, early May, I want it back because it was really good.
Yeah, so that first game hurt, and especially looking forward because the next day you were going to be facing Lucas Giolito. And we've talked ad nauseum about just how unhittable he's been, and not just mowing down bad lineups, mowing down just, the juggernaut Yankees, just everybody he's faced. And
the Astros.
Yep, and the Astros. And you're like, man, with the way the Cubs bats have been and the way this guy is pitching, you were just like, at least for me, I went, all right, we're about to get swept at home by the White Sox.
Yeah, I thought that too. And then Wilson Contreras says hello.
And Wilson Contreras just said, Lucas Giolito, who? And
that grand slam in the first inning was shocking.
Yeah, and they didn't let up on Lucas Giolito either. It's not like they had the one bad inning. They kept going. And they got 4 in the first, 1 in the third, 1 in the fourth, and they were constantly getting base runners. So, Lucas Giolito gave up didn't even make it 5 innings. Gave up 7 hits, 6 earned runs, and 3 walks, which is based on what he's been doing, a surprising number of walks.
Yeah, I know he was getting squeezed a little bit, but it was still very uncharacteristic for Lucas Giolito, and I think the Cubs were playing a little angry after the day before because they darn well know they didn't play well and they let it slip away. And the Sox took advantage of that. And, you also have to give the Sox credit for, in that game the Cubs won, they made it interesting. They didn't fold. You've seen Sox teams in the past that just, when they were down, they would just completely fold. But, the Sox gave an effort to come back. They got a few runs off John Lester, and, they made it an interesting game. The Cubs bullpen came in and shut the rest of it down. But, the Sox didn't give up in that game.
No, and, John Lester wasn't the sharpest he's been, but he powered through, and threw a lot of pitches.
Yeah, he did. I think
what was the end up count being, like 115 or something?
Yeah, didn't he only squeeze through like 6 too? I think he went like 5 or 6
innings,
something like that.
5 2/3.
5 2/3. Oh, there you go. So almost 6. Yeah, the Sox are making him work. The Sox are hitting some hard hit balls off of him. White Sox question for you: where on earth did this version of James McCann come from?
No idea. In the game, he was only 1 for 3, but man, he made Lester work.
And that home run he hit was a bomb to right center.
Yeah, I don't know where that came from. I don't know if this is a fluke. I don't know if the light just came on. I don't know. He looks like a grown man at that plate. It's like when you watch Joey Votto bat, where he just looks like he knows what you're going to do, has an idea what you're going to do before you do. And McCann kind of has that same thing where, you're really not fooling him.
No. You look at James McCann in his days with Detroit, he started as like a backup and then he started getting a little more playing time, and he always had a little bit of pop. He had 12 home runs in 2016 and in 2017-13, but he's already at 7 home runs this year. He's slashing 319, 380, 505. Last year, he slashed 220, 267, 314. In his career in Detroit, he batted 240, 288, 366 with 40 homers. There's a really dramatic difference here. Maybe he made some adjustments, like you said. Maybe a change of environment was good for him. Because I think here he finally felt like not like a young player anymore that was like just there to help the team. I think he feels like a veteran presence at this point with the White Sox. So maybe just...
But it's crazy. He's 29 years old and suddenly does this at age 29.
Yeah. I mean, it happens.
I mean, I'm not gonna toss around an accusation, but it's just weird.
It is.
You know, that's a weird age to where things just start really clicking.
Yeah, I mean, we'll see what happens as time goes by, but I mean, he's got an OPS plus of 136. Last year's OPS plus was 57. And now, granted, last year was probably a career low for him because the year before, when he hit 13 home runs, he slashed 253, 318, 415 with an OPS plus of 94 with those 13 homers, 49 RBIs. I mean, for a catcher that played 106 games, that's pretty solid. But I mean, he's on an all-star level right now.
Yeah, absolutely. Absolutely. But yeah, I mean, the game there, I mean, the game 2 was just Wilson Contreras owning Lucas Giolito. And that was the big difference in the game. And you're right, the White Sox didn't give up. It was funny because at the end, you're like, did you feel confident until that last out?
No, I didn't.
And
I did not.
And I was so glad that the Cubs got that insurance run in the 8th because I was like, 6-3, man. This is really starting to make me nervous.
I was right there with you. And then Schwarber hit the double to drive an insurance run. And yeah, and then you had Zach Collins with his first ever plate appearance and he walked. But other than that, there was no other drama. But I was definitely not fully comfortable until the final out.
Yeah, I totally agree. It was just it was a different White Sox team than you've been watching in the previous few seasons. They really are competing, and I know a lot of people, just White Sox fans, hate Ricky Renteria, but you know what? He's got these young kids playing well, and he's got this team playing hard. And a lot of that is Ricky Renteria. You know, the front office put the talent there. The kids are putting in the work, but man, Ricky Renteria really, really motivates these guys. And sure, he is not a very good strategist, X's and O's guy, if you will, but he's a great teacher, great motivator. And, if the White Sox do decide to pull what the Cubs did, you just hope, for your sake, that Ricky Renteria is willing to take some sort of assignment in your organization because he does help make these young players better.
Yeah, like I said, I think he's a good coach, not necessarily a great manager, because you see some of the good things he does while also batting Yonder Alonso in the cleanup spot or batting Wellington Castillo in the cleanup spot. So you see the goods and the bads.
Can we talk about Yonder Alonso real quick?
Sure.
Why is he on this team?
I don't know. Well, I know why he's on this team. I mean, I knew why he was brought in here. But why
is he on there in June, whatever today is? Why is he still on this team?
Yeah, and I thought even with Manny Machado not coming here going into the season, I thought Yonder Alonso was going to be a decent asset to have because you look at his last few years and you say, okay, last year he batted .250 with 23 homers, and in 2017 he was an all-star with 28 homers, a .266, .365 slash with a .501 slugging. But oh my God, this year, going into today, this is not counting today's game where I'm pretty sure he had a nice offer or whatever, but batting 176, 277, 305 with 51 strikeouts and 210 at-bats. Yeah, I think if he keeps this up, he's going to be a DFA candidate big time.
Yeah, he went 1 for 4 today, but yeah, on the season, he's a .580 OPS.
Sheesh.
You can't keep batting a guy like that. Even if your team is not going anywhere, that's just waving the white flag. The guy is not hitting for crap. And your whole purpose of your main purpose for bringing him here was to try to woo Manny Machado. Manny Machado went elsewhere. Is Yonder Alonso is not hitting. Didn't bring the guy here that you were hoping he'd bring. So what purpose is he serving?
Yeah, I think they got to move on there. He's kind of reminding me of like the Sox version of Daniel Descalso here with the Cubs.
Yeah, that's probably a fair comparison.
Because Daniel Descalso doesn't have the track record that Yonder Alonso has, but still, we thought that Daniel Descalso was going to be a respectable hitter because the last 2 years he's been better and more of a respectable hitter. And when Yonder Alonso was brought to the Sox, I thought, okay, he could hit 20 homers and maybe a 260, 340 on base and a good veteran presence, someone to kind of man the swing DH / first base. You could share with Jose Abreu. That has not been the case at all. And with Zach Collins coming, I think you just got to play him as much as you can. And I think they're going to play him at DH more than not. So you really don't have any purpose for Yonder Alonso at this point.
Yeah, no, because all he is a guy that's taking up at-bats from developmental kids that need it.
Yeah, absolutely. I was looking at the Sox roster right after the Cubs series. When's the last time can you say that the middle of the order was this good? I mean, maybe from the top to the middle, because Moncada is playing really well. I mean, really, really well. You have Eloy Jimenez heating up. You have Tim Anderson doing what he's doing. Jose Abreu's numbers are not quite where they normally are, but he's still a productive bat, and you still got to treat him as such. I mean, the 259 average, 300 OBP, but still 17 home runs, 54 RBIs, slugging percentage near 500. I mean, you looked at the past few seasons when they were in the early rebuild, and it looked like holes everywhere. But now you got a lot of bats that you got to be careful with in that lineup. And as a Cubs fan, I saw that firsthand.
Yeah, absolutely. You're just, they're growing into a really dangerous middle of the order.
You know what the other thing I noticed about the Sox is? They have some I'm not saying the whole bullpen is great, but they got some pretty nice arms in that bullpen. You have Alex Colomé. You have Aaron Bummer. I mean, look at what that guy's doing. You have Evan Marshall. Juan Minaya has been pretty solid. You have some pretty decent arms in that bullpen.
I forgot who it was. Somebody on the score proposed a trade of Aaron Bummer for Ian Happ, straight up. And as a Cubs fan, yeah, I would probably go for that. That would be very beneficial for the Cubs right now. But for the White Sox, why would you do that?
Yeah, I think that'd be taking a bit of a gamble. I think that this was 2 years ago when Happ still had... I still think Happ has some potential, but when he had a lot of potential a few years ago, that'd be a different story. But yeah, I'm not sure the Sox would want to explore that necessarily, unless their thinking was, hey, Aaron Bummer's having this career year right now. He's still young. Trade him while he has value to get something. But even so, still, I'm not sure I'd do that if I were Rick Hahn.
If you're Rick Hahn, where would Ian Happ fit? He would still be in the minors. He'd be in AAA. You don't really have a hole for him to fill, and he's a big strikeout guy anyway. Unless you really thought that you could help him cut down those strikeouts and then flip him for something, but it just doesn't seem like a win for the White Sox on that one.
No, it probably wouldn't be. I'm looking at the roster right now, and it's like, well, if you brought him here, Ian Happ, Louis Garcia is playing pretty well this year. 282, 319, 390. So, he's playing fine. You have right field, Ryan Cordell. He's not all that productive. If you wanted to put him out there somewhere when you thought the time was right, but it's not like the Sox are an Ian Happ away from taking the big step, you know?
Nobody's an Ian Happ away from anything.
No, unfortunately, no.
Yeah, so I just don't. I mean, it would work out for the Cubs right now because they could really use Aaron Bummer in the bullpen, but I don't see him, the White Sox making that trade at all.
No, I don't either. And he would be a great fit in the Cubs bullpen, a power throwing lefty. We don't really have one of those right now. What do you think the Sox are going to do with Colome?
I mean, I think they're going to probably hang on to anything unless somebody just really wows them.
Mm-hmm.
Because, I mean, if you're the White Sox, you see the way the bats are progressing, and you got to be really happy. And that offensively, they're very talented as it stands right now, without plugging any weaknesses that you have in the offseason with money. You have a pretty solid offensive lineup. Pitching wise, Lucas Giolito looks legit. And if some of your injured players come back and play reasonably well, you feel that's an upgrade from what you have, and you're already playing right around 500 baseball. Is you add a couple of better pitchers in there, and you have to feel like that you can at least compete for a wild card. So unless somebody's blowing you away with an offer, why do you give up on a bullpen that's actually playing well?
Yeah, I totally agree with you. I'm right there with you.
Yeah, I mean, I don't know what contract situations are. I'd have to look at that. So, I mean, if it's something where somebody's on the last year of a deal, maybe they flip. But I don't think that's the case. So why would you trade a position of strength to make it a weakness unless somebody's really going to blow you away?
Or if you go on a big slide and you're like, okay, we have no shot at a postseason. But I think the White Sox are going to hang around. I really don't see them falling apart at this point.
But I mean, even if it's not for this year, for next year is, if you've got these guys under contract for next year, well, why in the world would you flip them unless somebody's just going to, really give you the farm for?
Right, I'm just talking about guys who are on expiring contracts.
Yeah, expiring contracts. That would probably depend on what they're doing. But
speaking of contracts, here's an interesting name I wanted to talk to you about really quickly. John Jay is still on the roster, right?
Huh.
He hasn't played a single game this year due to injury. He is held out of action. According to Baseball Reference, after being put on the 60-day DL, he has started a rehab assignment and is likely to be held out of action until the beginning of July. You remember former Cubs great John Jay? He was here in 2017. Did a pretty good job here too. But yeah, he's still with the White Sox, in case you forgot.
I actually did forget. That could be an interesting name if you can get him some at-bats before the trade deadline.
I just don't know if he's going to get enough at-bats because they said held out of action until at least the beginning of July.
Yeah.
But who knows the one that's going to actually be.
Yeah, if you can, and he looks solid. I mean, somebody might take because he's a veteran bat. There's not many good veteran bats that come along at the trade deadline. So I don't know. If you're with White Sox, your White Sox fans, you've got to trust Rick Hahn and what he's done. So, if he's able to make the move, you got to applaud him on that.
Honestly, if he does come back and he plays decently and some team is willing to give up something very small for him, I'd be tempted to just take that because I'm not really sure at this point what John Jay is going to do for you going forward. It may be in a different story if he was playing from the beginning of the season, but to me, the John Jay signing was two things. A, to get Manny Machado here, / B, if not, if he was going to play the season, start the season, he would be a sign and flip type of guy. So I don't know. I just don't know what they're going to get for him. I mean, not in a trade wise, but like, what are they going to get from him? I should say. I have no idea.
And not to switch the subject completely, but I was just looking. So Yonder Alonso has his big charity baseball tournament a week from today, the June 30th. So I wonder if him not being DFA'd is kind of a, hey, let's not do it right before his big annual charity event. Let's wait till after the event and then let's DFA him, because that would really be a crappy thing to do, to get rid of a guy and then him just be like, I've got my big charity thing going on. So let's see what happens a week from tomorrow if he's still a White Sox.
Yeah, we'll see. I think most Sox fans are ready to move on from him. Is he signed through this year and next year? I'd have to look at his contract because I'm not really sure. Let's see. Yeah, he's got a $9 million team option next year and a $1 million buyout. So he's making $8 million this year because remember he was traded from the Cleveland Indians to the Sox for Alex Call.
$8 million. Yeah, $8 million for this year.
Yeah.
But
if you eat that money, it's not like you're spending any money. So I don't know. Or either that or you trade him for just nothing to just take some money off the books. But he's got no value. That's the thing.
Yeah, who is taking that? It's no value and
the
all
London
salary. So after the White Sox series, Cubs hosted a 4-game series with the New York Metropolitans. And I really thought this would go better. I thought that the Cubs would be able to take at least three or four. They've up to this point, the Cubs have really played well at home. And I was like, all right, things are going to straighten out. The Mets are not a terrible team, but they're not a good team.
They're nowhere near a good team, if you ask me.
Yeah, they're just a meh team. And man, the Cubs really struggled.
Yeah. I think we could say the two brightest spots. Obviously, they ended up splitting 2-2. The big go-ahead 3-run home run by Javi today was awesome. It was much needed. But I think the biggest bright spot, at least, was how Adbert Alzolay looked, who made his debut on Thursday night when he came in and pitched several innings and only gave up a solo home run to Todd Frazier. But in between those two games, you lost a really frustrating one Friday, got your ass whooped embarrassingly yesterday. I really wanted to take 3 of 4 in this series.
I have a question. Did you finish watching yesterday's game?
No. I turned it off in the 3rd inning to be with people. There wasn't any way I was watching that.
Any Cubs fans listening, did anyone finish watching that game? If you did, you deserve some sort of prize because that was a tough pill to swallow.
You deserve a free hot dog at a Cubs game delivered to you by Clark the Cub.
You just sparked my memory is so by saying Clark the Cub is I saw the Rays mascot, and I don't know if this was photoshopped or I'm assuming this was photoshopped. I hope it was photoshopped. It was the Rays mascot, and he was holding up a sign. It says "to do," and it said Steve Irwin, and then crossed a line through it and said number 2 World Series.
Oh, I hope that was fake.
It's Florida though, so it really could be real.
It could be. It could be.
Because that's very Florida.
Yes, it is.
I mean, you look at such famous Floridians like Chris Sale, who has been known to get red-assed and try to fight the opposing locker room and cut off his sleeves because he didn't like them. So I mean, that could be a very Florida thing. I'm just hoping it was a Photoshop because too soon.
Wait, it's always too soon for Steve Irwin.
Yeah, he was a treasure.
He was. He really was.
But back to the Cubs. It's I mean, you saw Alzolay had pitched really well. I mean, the one pitch bad to Todd Frazier, but other than that, looked really, really impressive.
Oh yeah, he was missing bats. He was dotting his pitches on all corners. The curveball looked good. The fastball was in the mid to upper 90s. The break on those breaking pitches, like that curveball I mentioned, was good. A very impressive work by the kid, and it's going to be interesting to see how he pitches against a very good Braves team coming up this week.
Yeah, I mean, it's this got to be a confidence boost. So hopefully he pitches well. You had yesterday's game with Quintana, which was just, we talked before about the home run by Eloy Jimenez, and you're like, okay, that was a real shot to the gut. Maybe Quintana can come in and just be like, all right, well, I'm going to show up that I was worth trading Eloy Jimenez for, and he just took a giant dump in his pants.
Yeah. Yep, it was pretty ugly.
I mean, it was absolutely brutal.
He was getting teed off.
It was like every pitch was tipped. Like I don't even know how to just in 4 1/3, 9 hits, 9 runs, only two strikeouts, 79 pitches, and gave up 9 runs.
Woof.
That's just
woof.
And
next start is against the Braves, who have absolutely owned him in his career.
Yeah, pretty much. So you're not expecting a huge, boost there. And today's game, I really had given up hope. And I don't know why, because I know you retweeted it, and a few other people retweeted the stats with, was it home runs with 0-2 counts?
Biasley is like first in the majors over teams combined.
Yeah, he's ahead of like he's either ahead or tied with every team in baseball with home runs with 0-2 counts. And to be fair, he's a free swinger, so he's going to be in a lot of 0-2 counts.
It's still hard to do, though.
It is
to hit a home run.
That is, I mean, I'm not even diminishing it. I'm just saying that he's probably going to see a lot more 0-2 counts, and he's been known to really wallop bad pitches. And good for Javi, man. He's again back-to-back years just really carrying this team offensively.
Yeah, I mean, that was huge today. As soon as he hit it and he stood there and watched, you knew it was going to go a long, long way. I mean, that was huge. You're on the verge of losing 3 of 4 to the stinking Mets at home, with the Braves coming in.
And I'm not going to be one of those people that just absolutely hates on Chris Bryant, but I mean, his numbers are good. 280, 389, 531, 921. But don't they feel like a little bit hollow? Like, I mean, he's not the one that's coming up big in big games. It just doesn't. It's Javi. It's Javi and it's Rizzo. And I mean, maybe it's just a perception, but it feels like he either does well in a loss or in a big win. And, when you need him in a tight race, in a tight game, that he's not coming up big.
I feel like with Bryant, the big things he does do in late inning comebacks is get on base. He's not exactly the one getting the clutch hit. Obviously, he had that big walk-off home run a few times earlier, but I know what you mean. The actual people who come up and drive those big runs in, that has mainly been Javi and Rizzo. I think there is something to that. Bryant is not the first. Bryant, to me, may be the best overall talented player on the team, but he's not the player I want most in certain situations. Rizzo is the guy I want most. Zobrist to be another, but he's not here. And Baez, you would think, free stringer, you don't want him, but he's come up big so many times. I know exactly what you're talking about. I know there's this whole Chris Bryant isn't clutch narrative, and sometimes I think that narrative is a little over-exaggerated, but I do feel like there are times when you can look and say, yeah, Bryant is not as good as coming up with a big hit to take the lead or to win the game as Javi or Rizzo. Like I said, we've seen Bryant involved in rallies where he gets on base, so that's good, but I do know what you mean.
Is another guy who I actually really like in those clutch situations, the Boatman.
Well, yeah, we've seen him come up big there. You could kind of say a similar thing about Wilson Contreras. He's come up in a number of big spots, but there are times where he gets overly emotional, and I think he overswings a little too much. So you can definitely say you got a lot of talent, but you could rank the guys you'd want up in those certain situations for sure. And Bryant is not necessarily in my top three.
Did you see the thing I retweeted? I saw it made me laugh, and it was like the beginning of like a dating app. It was like I'm a man woman looking for man woman, and it had a third option for both. It's like it skipped over man woman and went to Cubs fan, and then it said looking for, it skips over man woman and said hits with runners in scoring position.
Yeah, I saw that.
It's real dumb, but it made me laugh so hard. Like I was like, I just not what I was expecting, and it's really true. I would love to see some hits with runners in the scoring position.
Look, you know me. I like my more advanced stats. I like that stuff. But one thing that I think I really don't like from some advanced stats people is they basically say clutch hitting isn't a thing. Clutch hitting is a thing. Because certain situations see certain scenarios and certain pitches being thrown. I don't think that just looking at someone's batting average with RISP is necessarily the best indicator, because sample sizes are different. You bat in different situations. So maybe you'll be like 0 with runners in scoring position, but you don't see a lot of those situations, so the sample size isn't big. But I do think there is something to clutch hitting. Even if the Cubs are at X run differential, this many runs scored, because look, you can score a lot of runs, but how many of those runs are coming via the home run or coming in big blowout games, not spread out, where you're losing a number of games because you can't come up with a big hit? I think there's something to that.
And we can't even blame Chili Davis. I mean, we can. I blame Chili Davis for most of the bad things that happen in my life. But
your dog just pukes all over the couch and you blame Chili Davis.
You're like, damn it, Chili Davis. Yeah, I mean, for my wife's birthday, we went to Wisconsin for Friday, Saturday, and on the way up, we were supposed to take like 2.5 hours to get where we were going, and there was a major accident right by IKEA in Schaumburg on the expressway, and it was like a 2-hour backup.
Yeah,
and I literally went, damn it, Chili Davis.
Oh my goodness.
It's like, this Chili Davis ruining my day.
Grr. Wasn't it ironic that Chili Davis's Mets were in town and the Mets were the ones bombing pitches out of the ballpark?
Yeah, they were also bombing beat writers out of the ballpark.
Yeah, how about that? We'll see if Mickey Callaway is still even there tomorrow.
I don't even know all the details. Like, I don't know what the question was. Just heard that he and Vargas just lost their shit. Like, I don't even.
Yeah. I guess the reporter said, I'll see you tomorrow, and Mickey Callaway took that as an attack. He's like, don't get smart with me, and then, charging Vargas comes, and
the quote I have here is, the manager said, "Don't be a smartass, mother blanker," and get that blank put out of here. We don't need that bullshit. And then Vargas said, "I'll knock you the F out, bro." Which is the total, meatball thing to say ever.
Are you talking to me?
I mean, I don't know if you remember, there was I think he was drafted first overall in baseball. Is a guy named Matt Bush.
Oh, I remember that
And
guy. Didn't he get into a lot of trouble?
But he went to another game that he wasn't playing, and after he had already bombed in his career, and he got into a fight with, I think it was with the other team, and yelled, "I'm Matt effing Bush." I was like, oof, bad luck, bro. Bad luck.
Yikes.
So I don't even know what to make of the Cubs. And you tweeted out something the other day, and it really sank into me. It was basically we know that this team is capable of doing good things. We know this team is talented, but they're not playing well. And I mean, we as fans have a right to criticize them. Just because they've won a World Series and they've made the playoffs, however many years in a row, and it's the best stretch of Cubs baseball we've seen in our lifetimes, doesn't mean that we can't be critical of the way they're playing.
No, I mean, look, you won a World Series a few years ago, and you have some holes. Your depth is not good. Russell stinks. Addison Russell stinks.
Oh, brother, this guy stinks!
In addition to that, Daniel Descalso.
Oh, brother, this guy stinks!
And unfortunately, though he is a former All-Star, pretty clear he doesn't... I mean, maybe he'll turn it around. I can't fully rule it out, but Carlos Gonzalez, I don't really think he's an answer either. So, unfortunately, so far...
This guy stinks!
And in addition to that, you don't have Ben Zobrist, who is huge for your team. Your bullpen doesn't have the right depth. You're going to get a huge upgrade very soon in Kimbrel, but there's still a bunch of guys you don't necessarily trust, even though I'd say the bullpen is playing a bit better now. You're just not playing like a complete team. Look at the freaking Dodgers. They're winning every single day. They have depth up and down. Everybody's producing. Look at teams like the Astros, the Yankees.
They just keep having new stars come up.
Yes,
hey, we got this other all-star in our minor league system.
We don't have that. Where's the random guy in our system that plays like an all-star? Bodie's good, but would you say he's an all-star? No.
And it's frustrating because these two teams have just been the absolute class of the National League for the last several years. And the Dodgers are clearly better, and they look like they're going to be better for a longer period of time. Whereas the Cubs, every week you're like, man, this literally could be the end of the winning window for the Cubs, because they need everybody to play better.
And it's like, do I think like this is like the official end, doom and gloom? There's no chance. No, I'm not saying that at all. Things can change. They can get better. The 7-game series in October, things can happen. You can't rule anything out. My fear is that they're going to be the team that plays good enough baseball in the regular season, but can't really go anywhere after that. That's my biggest fear, just because while the Cubs have a good team, to me right now, they're nowhere close to the Dodgers. I was going back and forth of how close they were between the two. Right now, I think the Dodgers are far and away better.
And here's the thing is baseball is a really long marathon season, but the playoffs are a sprint. And all it takes is a really, really hot pitcher and a couple of guys playing their best baseball to carry a team. I mean, look what Daniel Murphy did one year and absolutely just carried a team on his back. And whether or not they're playing up to it, the Cubs have several guys that are capable of carrying a team in the postseason. Wilson Contreras can do it. Javi Baez can do it. Anthony Rizzo can do it. Chris Bryant can do it. Hell, Kyle Schwarber can do it.
Yeah.
So you've got guys that can do it. And if he comes back, Ben Zobrist. So you've got the guys that could do it, and you've got the starting pitchers with the pedigree that they could do it. You've seen what Cole Hamels has done previously in the playoffs. Didn't he win the World Series MVP?
Yes, he did. His World Series / postseason numbers are very good.
Kyle Hendricks has looked great in postseason. John Lester has looked great in postseason.
One of the best ever.
You've got pitchers that you can just, rotate through, and other teams going, how are we going to hit these guys? And you've got batters that if they go hot, how do we get these guys out? The problem is we have not seen them do it yet this season. And you just need that to happen at the right time at the end of the year. And what we've seen in the last couple of years is them fade at the end of the year.
Right. I mean, especially last year. Look, I think there's going to need to be adjustments made. You're going to have to get, my opinion now, I think you have to get another bat. That wasn't really on my mind for a while going into the season, but I think right now it's kind of obvious you need a reliable bat. I don't know where you're going to get it. I don't know where you're going to find it. But look, you can't have Daniel Descalso and Addison Russell out there just making out after out. I truly feel bad for Daniel Descalso. He looks so frustrated, and I like him as a guy, but holy shit. The numbers are...
Here's the thing, is what the Cubs need is a veteran bat that has had postseason success, maybe even been a World Series MVP, that they can get without having to give up anything.
So praying Ben Zobrist comes back.
Yes. That's the bat that they need. I mean, that's the answer. And I'm starting to feel that, I said it before, I could just see him walking away. I think he's going to come at some point towards the end of the season, finish out the end of the season playoff run, and then, walk away from it all. I think he just wants to get those last at bats in, and
yeah, he wants to go out at least trying on top, and yeah, I can see that.
And if that's the case, I can't see you being able to get a bat at this point that is better than him with what you have to trade.
Yeah, it's true. Because I would love a Howie Kendrick. I was talking about Sin-Soo Choo, but Sin-Soo Choo is very expensive, and Howie Kendrick may cost you something you don't have. So it's not going to be easy. I think one thing they should absolutely try is Robel Garcia. He's tearing it up in AAA. I put Russell on the IL. Put Russell on the IL.
Oh, brother.
Oh, it didn't play. Dang it.
Oh, brother, this guy stinks!
There we go. There we go.
It's
Well, I mean,
funny
look,
because it's true.
it is true. And like, look, we can say a guy is good or bad at baseball. Like Descalso is struggling, but like you feel for him. I have no problems calling Addison Russell just a piece of crap. None whatsoever.
Oh, brother, this guy stinks!
This was my idea, by the way, just for the record.
And I'm just enjoying it.
And this is a new tradition on our show. So we're gonna enjoy it fully. But I mean,
I don't care if he doesn't, if he gets a hit every single time he bats for the rest of the season. This is still going to happen.
Yep, absolutely, no doubt. No matter what happens, because they say the guy's hand is hurting, so why not just IL him and try something else?
Yeah. And it's not like you can't put Bodie there, who's a better option.
Question for David Bodie, because I think him playing more often than not has been pretty beneficial.
Agreed.
It's interesting because you want Bryant in there. You also want Bodie in there. Bryant is not really that great of an outfielder, but I feel like if you had both of them there and Bryant in the outfield a little more, it would exchange for some bad defensive gaffes by Bryant out there in right. I don't want him in left ever again. I never, ever want to see that again. But I think if you put Bryant in right a little more and you have Hayward in center and Bodie on the infield, whether it's third or second, I think that's a bit more beneficial to you.
I would just put Bodie at second and leave Bryant at third and deal with the you're clearly not going to be as good defensively as we have Addison Russell, but it's not like he's just an awful second baseman, and his bat is what you need in the lineup. Is right now Addison Russell.
Oh, brother, this guy
Stinks, and he's just an easy out. David Bodie, even when he makes an out, is he strikes out quite a bit, but he makes some good contact with baseball.
Yeah, he does. And he can put together a pretty good at bat. If we do try the Robel Garcia experiment, if that ever comes to light, I think you may see more Bryant in outfield, Hayward in center. Because the other thing I kind of wanted to mention was, even though I like the guy as a guy and I like his defense, Albert Almora Jr. is just not a good hitter. He's very mediocre.
Yeah. And the thing is, like, the reason that I'm less I beat up on him less is because he makes contact, and he's the best. He's probably one of the best contact hitters on the Cubs. If you need somebody to not strike out and just put the ball in play, he's of the current crop. He's right up there, but man, he's just not the guy you want up in a clutch situation.
So many ground balls, just so many ground ball double plays.
Yeah, and you need something to shake this lineup and get more production and get consistent production. You can't rely on the long ball to score all of your runs.
No, and I'm all for Albert Almora Jr. pinch hitting against the lefty, playing every now and then against the lefties, starting or
defensive
coming
replacement.
in defensively. Yeah, I'm all for that. I think there is a spot for Almora. It's just I used to be on the, last year I was on the play him every day train. I think he's a platoon bench defensive replacement guy at this point, which he's not completely useless. He's not, but I just don't think he's a good enough hitter to be in there every day.
Fully agreed. I mean, as a bench player and a defensive replacement, you're very happy with him. Like as an extra guy, a pinch hitter, you can't ask for too much more than him. But as an everyday player, he's just not an everyday player on a team that's going to win a World Series.
Yeah, he's an Austin Jackson with a little less power, I guess.
And I finally have started to forgive Chris Bryant for that weak throw from the outfield home. Today, when I saw the second baseman on an infield pop-up let Tatis score from third.
Yeah.
Did you see that?
Yikes.
That was a yikes on every level, because 10 times out of 10 times you should throw him out. And granted, it was close, but man, he scored.
Yeah, that was something. We've seen some really weird plays. You saw that, and you saw the bunt double by Matt Carpenter the other day. Did you see that?
I did.
I mean, that's just wild.
That's baseball.
It is.
But the Cubs going forward, although they're still on a homestand, this schedule does not get easier.
No.
You've got 4 against. I hate 4-game series. I really do. It's one thing if they're on the road, but at home, it's real hard to win 4 out of 4. And the best you can hope for is 3 out of 4. But most of the time you get split 2 and a 2. And at home, you've got to be better than that. And you've got Atlanta coming in here for 4. And then you go to Cincinnati. And then you play like 900 games against Pittsburgh. You got a 4-game series at Pittsburgh. Then go to the White Sox. And then after the All-Star break, you got another series with Pittsburgh, Cincinnati. So it's all tough teams and division opponents for the next almost month.
Yeah, you got to play good baseball here if you want to make the postseason. It's getting to the point of the season where you can't F more.
Yeah, and you are still in first place. Barely. You're barely in first place.
Which is frustrating because the Brewers until today played like absolute garbage the past week, and you couldn't build a nice lead.
No, I mean they've basically told you, here, pad this lead, and you've said no, we'll just push. And all the while, the Cardinals are just like, well, we're going to creep up and be right back into this.
Yeah, because they've had the luxury of playing the damn Marlins and Angels, and yeah.
So it's a really tight race. I mean, I think the Cardinals were losing today, but if the Cardinals won today, I think they're 1 game back and 2 games if they're not, or they don't. So they're still right there. The Brewers are right there and hot on the Cubs' heels, and the Cubs have a bunch of tough games, and they're not showing a ton of life, where you feel confident in this 4-game series against Atlanta.
Yeah, I would love a pleasant surprise and just beat Atlanta. I mean, Atlanta's red hot right now. That's a scary thing. A lot of dangerous thunder in those lineups.
Yeah, and you've got Lester going tomorrow, and you don't know which John Lester you're going to get. I mean, that's the sad part. And then I don't know is it Azalea going to pitch game 2?
Yeah, Alzolay, then Quintana.
No, then Darvish.
Darvish
and
than
Quintana. So Quintana's got the fourth game. So, I mean, you've got a Jekyll and Hyde guy over the last, however many weeks, a guy making his first start, a guy who has been another guy that's been Jekyll and Hyde, and a guy who's just got a bad track record against this team and is coming off of probably his worst start of his career. So there's a lot of things that just don't look good for the Cubs, other than the fact that it's at home.
Yeah. Yep. Exactly. The two pitchers you'd want in this situation, one's hurt and one pitched today. So,
and it is what it is.
Yep. Gonna have to make way.
So let's switch gears here and talk. Do you want to talk Bulls or do you want to talk Blackhawks?
Let's get into Bulls. I think that's what a lot of people are listening for.
So we had the NBA draft on Thursday. All 2 rounds. It's funny, man. You look at some of the other sports and you've got a lot of great players that come in later rounds. In the NBA, it's basically the first, 10 picks, and then it's a bunch of meh players that probably won't make it. And we already talked about how the Bulls got chooched by the NBA and they got the number 7 overall pick again in what people are saying is a 2-person draft. And we heard a lot about potential for the Bulls to move up because they clearly need a point guard. And, John Morant is the guy you want. And there was no way they were getting him. You just, unless you traded everybody to move up to second, and that sort of defeats the purpose. You weren't going to go up to 2. There was a potential you could move up a little bit to draft Darius Garland from Vanderbilt, who was the guy I wanted. I felt like he would be really big. I mean, other than John Morant or Zion Williamson, I felt like he would be very good on this team. And he went before the Bulls could pick. So the Bulls stood pat. And no pun intended there. And ended up drafting Cubs-White from North Carolina, the point guard.
I think that this was the smartest pick or one of the smarter picks you could have made in that position. You weren't going to get a top 5 or top 3 guy, obviously. I really liked Culver, but Culver wasn't dropping that far. I mean, Minnesota traded up to get him. But you look at Cubs-White, and, there are things to like. He's fast. He's versatile. He's confident. He's got a great attitude. I know a lot of people.
He's tall for a point guard.
He is tall for a point guard. I know people who watched him liked him. People who played with him had very good things to say about him. Maybe his IQ isn't always the greatest. Doesn't sound like he's the best defender either, but that could be said about any Bull. But, I mean, hey, you drafted a point guard that can score. I think that was a big need for the Bulls.
So I was at the Big Bulls draft party by Doug Tonis, and C-Dub was there, and C-Red Fred, and a bunch of other Bulls bloggers.
Because Big Dave was doing Bulls Outsiders, right?
It was really fun. Yeah, so he was not there. So his was a big presence there. But I was talking with C-Dub and C-Red Fred about this before the draft, and once we started to see the way the draft was unfolding, we're like, it's going to be Cubs-White to the Bulls. And our attitude was all kind of, well, let's hope for the best. But I'm none of us were really high on Cubs-White. I mean, you watch his highlights, and he's got a lot of good things that he did. Nifty footwork, good ball handler. He makes his own shot. He had 5 games as a freshman at North Carolina of 27 points or more, which, is phenomenal.
And, as a shooter, either, pulling up and doing his own jump shot or as a spot shooter, shot almost 50%. But you just watch, and a lot of the things he did was against college defenders, and I just don't see that translating per se to the NBA. And to be fair, I said a lot of the same things about Trae Young last year, and I looked dumb there. And I'm hoping that's the case here. But, he's another guy that he really can only play defense against a point guard. He's not fit. Like, he doesn't have the body to be able to play physical defense. He's,
No, I mean, that's probably one of his biggest weaknesses.
he looks like a beanpole. He's 6'5", so he's really tall. He's got a wingspan's a little bit taller than his height, which is nice having the length. But he weighs 190 pounds. Like, that's beanpole. And he's also even though he's a point guard, he's a score first guard, not a facilitator. And here's the thing: is you need Zach LaVine he's got to have the ball to be a scorer. You need Lauri Markkanen to have the ball more to score. There's only one basketball, so my thinking is: does Coby White, is he your second team scorer? Do you have to still go out and get a veteran point guard for this team?
I think you do either way. I think regardless of how good he does, I still think you need a veteran point guard.
And I think that's the case. You got to have a veteran point guard, and Coby White is your second team, point guard, the guy that puts points on the board while Zach LaVine is on the bench. You look at it, and there's 96. If you think you got two guards on the court, there's 96 minutes of guard play in a game. So you definitely need scoring. You need guard minutes. So I think he does have a role, but during the broadcast, they were like, oh, the comparison with him is Gilbert Arenas. And I went, you're going to compare Coby White to Agent Zero? No, I don't see that. I really want Coby White to do well. He seems like a real nice kid, and it felt so bad for him because he's still putting on the hat, and he's trying to get his Bulls hat on, and they're just running up to him like, "Tell us about your dead father."
Yeah, like what the hell, man?
Way to minimize the arguably the greatest day of this kid's life with probably the worst day of his life. He clearly honored his father. He wrote a story before the draft for the Players Tribune. It's out there. Why do you got to do this on draft night?
Yeah, I don't like that either. That drives me crazy when they do that.
So I'm hoping that he can grow into something. I don't know who I would have rather have taken in that spot.
Right. That's kind of what I'm saying. It's like it may not be like a superstar you're drafting, but where you were at, it seems like a smarter pick than something else.
Yeah, but my fear is that, and I don't think Coby White's going to be a flop. I just feel like he's going to be a guy. Like, he's definitely a good basketball player. I just don't think he's going to be a dominant player in this league. I think he's a guy. And Fred and C-Dub kind of nodded, and they're like, that seems fitting. He's just a guy.
Yeah, I know what you mean. I kind of have that same feeling, but I also think that he has the skill set to be something. I'm a little optimistic about it, maybe a little more optimistic. I'm not expecting a superstar by any means. I mean, the Bulls don't have a superstar. That's a problem. But I think that he can go out and be something. I like the athleticism. The Bulls have lacked athleticism for so long. I just think that there could be something good with him, but only time will tell.
And here's the thing: is I agree with you. The Bulls do not have a superstar, but and that's like a Sir Mix-a-Lot big butt. Is they've got two guys that could be superstars, and if you look to a team, not too far north of us, is Giannis. Is until this year, he was a very good player. You would not call him a superstar. Maybe the year before, but before it was like, this guy is a athletic freak and he can do a lot of things. But you're like, would I take him over this guy? No way. He was just a good player. And then he took that, that next step and became a superstar, a guy that could carry a team, to a conference finals. And I realistically think that Lauri Markkanen has the skill set to do that same thing. Not to be another big white guy, but Dirk Nowitzki, that kind of guy. You look at a several year period of Dirk Nowitzki was just unstoppable, and Lauri Markkanen has the ability to be that kind of guy. Zach LaVine, you watched him points this year, and he looked unstoppable as an offensive player. Just needs to be more consistent, and needs to be more mindful about winning ball games over scoring points. But both of these guys are very good.
I just worry about Lauri's health.
I worry about both of their health.
Yeah.
You've got Wendell Carter, who's looking, he's going to be a solid player and, an important role player. Otto Porter looks like the glue for this team. It's finding another moving part. And this is this is the NBA. It's to find the mix and match that's going to work. In this league, it's not, it used to be when I was a kid, you had a center, you had two forwards, a shooting guard, and a point guard. And those traditional roles are sort of gone. It's kind of positionless basketball at this point. So it's finding a guy to fit into what you're trying to do with this team. And my concern is, do these guys all mesh together? And I don't know if they do. And Otto Porter makes it mesh a lot better, but I think they need to bring in another guy that can make this team mesh really well.
Well, I mean, one of the problems is that because of all these injuries, we haven't seen these guys play together as a unit yet. Really haven't seen much.
No, and I'm really hoping that they take this step forward. The Bulls had their second round pick, which most of the time is just throwaway. But this Daniel Gafford, he's a sophomore out of Arkansas. Big bodied kid. He's 6'11", 238. So he's got a nice body size. He's got a really long wingspan, 7'2". He's like a center power forward type guy. Good length and frame, really athletic guy. To be, real natural ability to be a rim protector, super athletic, fluid movement for a big man. And I think this is a guy that has a lot of potential, and you can put him out there at this point and not hurt you. He can play, as a rim protector, as a rebounder until he sort of grows into an offensive presence. But as a second rounder, you have to like, I like this pick, and I've seen some mixed reviews, and I don't really know what the downside was of him, but I kind of like this kid.
Yeah, I don't have much of an opinion on that, but hopefully he could get something there.
Yeah, I was reading that, after his freshman year, that they talked that he could be like a top 15 or top 20 pick, and he decided to go back to school. And I don't really know, what hurt him, in that regard, but ended up falling. The Bulls have him at 28th. And he had another year of experience. He's unlike, Larry Markkinen or Wendell Carter or Kobe White, who are guys with talent that just, they don't have grown man frames of their body. They're very skinny, tall and skinny. They needed to grow into their bodies. Gafford, he has a grown man body. He's got like 6 inches, but 50 pounds on Kobe White. So he's got a grown man frame. And I was reading comparisons to him, and you're looking at Marcus Camby was kind of the one I've seen most. And I'm all right with that. If you get a Marcus Camby type guy in the second round.
Well, anything you could take there is kind of a win that gives you something, right?
Right. And, so that just leads you to what you do in free agency now. And, I know a lot of people are like, oh, Patrick Beverley. Yes, it would be nice to have Patrick Beverley. He's a hometown guy, would love to play for the Bulls. But he said first and foremost, it's somebody's got to pay.
Yeah.
And I feel like there's going to be a lot of teams that offer him a lot of money. And if you're the Bulls, why are you going to try to spend a lot of money on overpay for somebody? If I'm the Bulls, I'm probably going to sit back and see who the bargain free agents are, because you're not going to, this is not your year. There's zero chance you're going to be a team that, is fighting for a championship. Best case scenario, you make 6th, 7th, 8th seed in the playoffs, best case scenario, but you are going to get smoked by, one of the better teams in the division. Either if Toronto re-signs Kawhi Leonard, they're going to smoke you. Milwaukee is going to smoke you. There's going to be teams that just smoke you. So why in the world are you going to lock up a bunch of money with a guy that's not an absolute superstar? I mean, it's one thing if you're like, all right, we're going to splurge and figure out a way to put Kawhi Leonard on this team. Okay. I'm all for that. But, as much as I like Patrick Beverley, I don't want him to be the reason that you're tied up financially. I would just sit there and wait for the bargain basement free agents and see what you can do with that.
That'd be kind of a typical Bulls move.
I just don't, I wouldn't want to see them just lock up a bunch of, all of your salary cap on a guy that's not going to push you to that next level.
Yeah, I'm right there with you.
So it's going to be interesting to see what they do. I just hope somehow the light comes on for John Paxson and he plays it smart.
Pray.
So that brings us to the Blackhawks.
Mm-hmm.
And we had promised that the Blackhawks were going to draft either Byram or Turcotte, and we were wrong. And I think everybody was kind of shocked at that.
Yeah, we went with Kirby Dach, the center from St. Albert, Alberta, Canada. Now, okay, here are my summed up feelings about that. The more I looked at Byram, the more I wanted him, the more I thought it was the obvious choice. He's a star, young, upcoming defenseman. What's our biggest need? Defense. Seemed like a match made in heaven. Stan Bowman had other plans and really liked Kirby Dach. Here's the thing. A part of me is kind of pissed we didn't go for Byram. I originally wanted Turcotte. I said it on the show last week, but the more I looked at Byram, the more I thought about it. I'm like, you know what? This probably makes more sense. That didn't happen. I don't think it's fair to Kirby Dach to be mad at him being here instead of Byram. I've heard some very good things about Kirby Dach. He's very good at handling the puck. He can use his strength to drive to the net. He's very good at setting up scoring. And center depth is something we do lack on this team, and he's going to be teammates with one of the best centers in the game in Jonathan Toews. But this is a bit of a gamble considering you didn't take the guy that seemed like a match made in heaven on a terrible defense.
And I initially thought that, and here's where I disagree is Byram was not ready to come in and play in the NHL right now.
No, he wasn't.
So he is a guy that, although your big need is defense right now, is number one, he's an offensive defenseman. So your scoring is going to go up, but is he necessarily a guy that's going to play really great defense and help shut down the other team's first line? Not necessarily. He's also a couple of years away. So, who knows where you're at that point. That's number one. Number two is because they passed on him, they've had in their last two drafts, they've had 3 number 1 picks. All 3 have been defensemen. Maybe, they've got Adam Bovquist, Henry Jokiharju, and Nicholas Bodin. And, what if they are really high on 1 or 2 of those guys, and feel like they could be help either this year or next year, and they feel like, they're better suited somewhere else. And it's not like Kirby Dach is a stretch. I looked at a bunch of mock drafts, and I think the latest I saw him being drafted was 8th. So he's right in that range.
Yeah, he was projected between like 7 and 11 by a lot of people.
A lot of the picks I saw was, Detroit taking him, and they thought he would fit great. And I started looking because I didn't know a lot about him because I was not expecting them to draft Kirby Dach. But the more I started watching tape of him, I'm actually real impressed. I really like this kid.
Yeah, no, I like Kirby Dach, but trust me, I'm not totally mad at this. I do like Kirby Dach. I think that he's got a lot of skills, and he's a big guy. And I think that he can be a very positive contributor to this team.
And I've heard a couple reports where they feel like he has the potential to make the team this year.
Yeah, I've heard people say he could. I've heard people say he may need some seasoning, but I think the consensus seems to be he's not far off.
Yeah, I mean, if he's not playing this season with the Blackhawks, he's not going back to the WHL, I don't think. He'll be in Rockford.
Right.
And
right.
I think, that's good sign, is that quickly to be able to do that. You watch him and he looks really polished. He's a big guy, 6'4", 200 pounds. The puck handling skills are amazing. He's got good size, good speed. And last year, the WHL, in 62 games, he had 73 points. So he was more than a point a game player. And
yeah, he was very good at setting up scoring.
Yes, and he is offensively, he is very gifted, and he's a two-way center. He does play defense. He's a very physical guy, really high hockey IQ, great playmaker. The multiple sites I've talked or that I've read where they've scouted him is they talk about what a general he is on the ice. Is he's an absolute leader, and I've seen several outlets compare him to Ryan Getzlaf.
I've seen that too.
And I'm like, that is a very good comparison. I mean, I really like that. And he reminds me a lot of John Taves as well. So if you could get this guy to come in, and if he's your third line center, I don't think that's a bad thing. So, as much as I was surprised, as much as I liked Turcotte and Byram, I'm not sad with this pick. And, I know a lot of people are beating up Stan Bowman about this, but I'm not. I was shocked, but I'm very happy with this pick now that I'm seeing the tape. I feel like I feel like there's several guys in here that could have, really stepped in and be good players. And it's looking like this is going to be a pretty solid draft.
Yeah, I agree. I do like Kirby Dach, and we'll see what Byram does in the NHL, but I am excited to have Kirby Dach here. I think there's a lot to like about him.
So, I mean, I'm really hoping that when we see training camp open, see what Kirby Dach can do. And it's going to be interesting to see how those three guys shape up, because in a couple of years, people are either going to beat the crap out of Stan Bowman, or they're just going to pretend that they didn't criticize him, because they're never going to give him credit. It'll either be that they forgot they criticized, or they're going to remember that they could have had those other two guys and criticize the crap out of them.
Absolutely.
And I don't know much about the other guys they picked, but the second rounder, they drafted a defenseman who's on the USA National Development League. He's a local kid. I think he's from Wilmette. 6'6", 200 pounds. So he's another big kid. He's planning to go to play at Boston University. So he's going to go with a big college program, and that's probably good. From what I read, is he's big, strong, has a lot of talent, but needs a lot of work. So he's going to a big time college program. So, hopefully that helps out there. They drafted a forward out of the Czech Republic, a Finnish forward. They got a goalie who's planning to go play college in Colorado, and then another WHL defenseman. So, yeah, now it's the open season in the NHL, free agency period, and that's going to be where the Blackhawks have to make some noise.
We've heard some rumors. We've heard Joe Pavelski, if he does decide to part ways with the Sharks. We've heard the Corey Perry rumor, but I don't think they should go in that direction. I think Corey Perry is pretty much washed at this point. Patrick Marleau may become a free agent if he doesn't want to play in Carolina, because he was traded there, but that's not somewhere I really want to go. I know a lot of eyes are going to be on Artemi Panarin. Good thing we didn't go after Erik Karlsson, because that deal was ridiculous.
I didn't even see what the final number was, but I heard the rumors of where it was going, and it looked just massive.
So you don't know the final numbers yet? You haven't heard them?
I have not heard the final number.
Well, it's an 8-year deal.
Yeah, I knew it was going to be an 8-year deal.
So I didn't look.
Don't tell me it went over 100.
Trying to look for the actual number here. It was an 8-year deal. They'd rumored like $11 million per year. What was it, $90 million? Something like that. Let's see, $88 million contract extension with an AAV of 11 plus million. He's already over 30, and he's already probably past his best years. I think they're going to regret that big time.
Oh, yeah, here, 8-year, $92 million. Yeah, that was not a good contract. And Artemi Panarin is a guy that, Blackhawks fans would love. And if you feel like some of your young defensemen are ready to step up and you can trade to help with some more defensemen, and so you feel like you've got the defense at least in a better spot, I would be okay with Artemi Panarin, but he is purely offense. But the thing is, I think he's going to go play with Florida.
Yeah, I can see it.
It's looking like Florida's going to sign both him and Bob Bobrovsky.
Yeah, under Coach Q. Hey, did you see the Blackhawks traded for his nephew or his cousin or whatever, John Quenneville?
Yeah, I saw. So I don't know what the Blackhawks are going to do here. I'm feeling that they're going to. I don't think they're going to go on a big splashy free agent signings. I think they're going to try to do some things with trade. So I don't know. Free agency just opened up, and we're going to see kind of where the Blackhawks actually go, and I have a feeling that they're not going to try to lock themselves into a tight cap situation. Because here's the thing. You've got a bunch of teams that got hit because the NHL salary cap didn't go as high as they'd hoped. So it's only like a $2.5 million difference a year, but with some teams that are really up against the cap, that was the difference between having to dump somebody and being able to keep somebody. So there's going to be teams out there that are going to be able to capitalize on the fact that there's going to be cap casualties. And, maybe the Blackhawks are actually going to be able to take advantage of that situation.
Yeah, you would hope.
I mean, maybe they're going to be the ones that finally can eat a salary and get a player attached to it.
Yeah. I just don't think the right way to go is like an old washed up player. We don't want to become the Red Wings.
No. But if you're able to eat a salary, and pick up a young player in the meantime, then maybe that's the way to go. You still got Artem Anisimov, who's a trade name that you can move.
Yeah, I still think they're going to try to do something with him.
I wouldn't be surprised. That's if they don't move him, I would be absolutely shocked.
Here's something I was thinking about the other day. It was right after they made the Mata trade. They traded Dominic Cahoon for Mata. I can't remember if I even said this on the show last week or not. But I'm sorry if I'm repeating myself if I am. But I had thought about the potential of Stan Bowman shopping Saad around. I don't know if I brought that up or not.
I think you did, and I'm all for it. But you better get something back for him because he's still got a lot of upside. So if you don't get something good for him, I don't think it makes sense to trade him.
Right, and I don't think they will. I just think that they definitely at least try to shop. There's a difference between shop and strong intention to trade.
Right. And, the trade I was insinuating about, where you can get it in your favor is when the Blackhawks had to ship Brian Bickle out and they sent Teuvo Teravainen along with it. It is because of cap casualty. If you're able to keep, your cap situation and be able to absorb a contract like, a Bickles, and you get a young, talented player as a toss in as a sweeten the deal. Thanks for doing this. That might be a win situation.
Yeah, for sure.
Because Carolina got a heck of a player out of that, Teuvo.
Yes, they did, and he seems to fit very well there.
Yeah, absolutely. And I really like Teuvo, and he, they had to work through some, rough times here at the Blackhawks because he was a little bit of a fish out of water, but you could always see that talent, and it would have been nice to have him last year.
Yeah, I've always been one to say that I don't think he was the right fit here. I think it was better for him to go to another team, but I would certainly love that type of player on this team.
I mean, I think Culleton would have fit a lot better with him than Q.
Yes.
But
yes,
that is what it is. So yeah, it's going to be interesting because they still need to improve on the blue line. Definitely.
Big time.
And we beat up a lot on Seabrook and Keith, and I think both guys can be effective. Just
if they're playing less minutes.
Is not playing against top lines and not playing, top line minutes. So like you can't be playing, first pairing minutes and playing against the top line if you're those two guys. If ideal situation is if you could have two guys step up and be the first pairing, Duncan Keith goes down to the second pairing and Seabrook is in your third pairing. If that was the case, like those two guys are going to look a whole lot better and you're probably going to have a solid defense. The problem is, are you going to be able to find that many guys? Is Henry Jogaharju going to take that next step? Is Bogquist ready to come up? Which Alimata are you going to get? Are you going to get somebody else that's going to, in a trade or free agency? Those are the things you got to ask yourself. And, there is a huge expanse of possibilities between going into the season with what you got right now, and which is probably better than what you had last year, but not by a whole heck of a lot, and being able to shore up this defense completely with some top talent. And Stan's got a big job ahead of him, and I'm really interested to see what he's going to do.
Mm-hmm. Absolutely. There's a long off season to go.
Yes, there is. And trying to see if there's any more Blackhawks trade rumors that I haven't seen yet. But I just they've got to be on the market for any sort of defenseman trade. And
you would think.
Yeah, any defenseman that's even being shopped, the Blackhawks got to be listening.
Yeah, of course.
So that's really all I had on that.
Yeah, I think with the Blackhawks, this is going to be the most active offseason we've seen in a while. We've seen seasons where they've been eaten alive by the salary cap and they've had to relieve themselves, but I think you're going to see a lot of different moves here just made for the future, and it'll be interesting.
Yeah, I'm actually excited for this coming season because we saw Jeremy Colleton do a lot of good things mid-season.
Yep.
It was a rough start for him in his beginning of his tenure, but man, they really came on at the end, even with a lot of huge flaws. I feel like with a whole off season and training camp, and they've already bought into him as their head coach, that there's going to be big improvements in certain areas. Like definitely you're going to see the PK, I think, improve drastically. You already saw him turn around the power play mid-season. And you hadn't seen a good power play in years. He turned that around. I think you're going to turn around the penalty kill. I think you're going to see some defensive improvement even without adding better talent. I think you're just going to, just by the nature of him being able to work with the defenseman and try to have a whole offseason of establishing the system he wants to run. I think you're going to see improvement. So I don't think that they're missing the playoffs this year unless there's just some catastrophic injuries.
Yeah, you would hope not, because I think, like you said, we have the new coaching scheme. We saw it start to work. I'm excited for what Jeremy Colleton could potentially do. I'm also very excited to see how Alex DeBrincat continues to grow, how Taves and Kane respond after having career seasons. There's a lot to think about. And these prospects coming up, Boquist and a lot of these other defensive prospects coming up, are they going to make a big difference? Going into last year, you were still under the same coaching scheme. I think by last year, it was kind of obvious that Coach Quenneville's time was pretty much done. I think that you were disappointed last year. I know that all of us were disappointed last year because in the offseason, they didn't do anything. They signed an old Cam Ward and an old Chris Kunitz. That's literally all they did. And they didn't have any first-round picks. Much different this year. A lot of things going on.
Yeah, so I'm actually really excited. We're not too far off from training camp. So it's going to be exciting to see how things look and to see some of the young players who's going to take the step up. I'm kind of excited about what they've got.
Absolutely.
Anything else you want to add?
No, I think I've pretty much said my piece this week.
All right, so that's going to do it for this episode of Bill Swirsky Sports Talk Chicago. I want to thank everybody so much for listening. Please hit subscribe, however you listen to podcasts, whether it's iTunes, Stitcher, YouTube, or the TuneIn app, Google Play, or Spotify, which we're now on Spotify. So make sure you hit subscribe. Also, follow us on social media at ChiFanPat1, at Swirsky Sports, Facebook.com/Swirsky Sports. Share this podcast with your friends. That's how we grow the podcast. And again, thank you guys so much for listening. And until next time, bear down.
Cubs win! What a lucky break! The good Lord wants the Cubs to win!
We thank Ditka and God for all they have provided.
Cubs win! Cubs win! Cubs win!
Oh, I don't want her. You can have her. She's a Packer fan. She can't fit in my van.
And she looks like Denver New Yorkers. Smoking crack is not legal on planes.
Bears 31 to -7.
The Bears.
Oh, when the Bears go bearing down.